All right, students, so this is our second video in the How to Write for AP History series that we're doing. Remember, this is just a recap series of what I covered in your freshman AP World History class. It's not a comprehensive treatment of any of the AP writings. It's just meant to help you to regain knowledge that you built while you were with me in ninth grade. Okay, in this video, we're going to look at the LEQ, the longer essay question, which if you remember, at least as of this year, you're going to receive 3 different choices of essay prompts for the LEQ. And in general, there's 1 prompt from the first third of the course's material, 1 prompt from the second third, and 1 prompt from the third. Okay, I have not graded the LEQ for AP History, but I have graded the DBQ and SAQ. So I think I can speak pretty confidently about how to at least get yourself a solid 4 on the LEQ. All right, first thing that I would like you to do is pause the video and brainstorm the ways that you earn the different points. Okay, it's important that you have in your mind where the different points come from for an LEQ. There are 6 points for the LEQ. Okay, the first point is just like the DBQ, it's your thesis point. We'll talk more about each one of these in a minute. Next, you've got your contextualization point. Next, you've got your evidence points. Okay, there's 2 evidence points. There's the use of evidence, and then there's the support your argument. All right, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of the difference between those in this video. Then there is the historical reasoning point. Sorry about my handwriting. And then there is what we call the complexity point. Okay, so the official AP rubric labels some of these things a little bit differently, but this is how I spoke to you about the points, and so that's why I'm using this language. If you're some random person that I've not taught watching this, you might be like, what the heck? It's not that your teacher's lying to you. It's that my brain is a little simpler than the rubric. So this is about all that I can handle. Okay, we in our class learned to put these 2 point attempts in the introduction to your essay. Okay, we represented the introduction to the essay as an upside down triangle. I don't know where this originated first, but our Cedar Springs teacher, Doug Stark, is the one who I first learned about the upside down triangle from. The idea is that you start your essay out broadly. You're setting the stage for your argument. And you're often going to do this by discussing events or processes that are relevant to the prompt and immediately precede the prompt. So if we're talking about the causes of the start of World War I, that's, by the way, an LEQ essay prompt that you'll never be lucky enough to get. But if we're doing that, I'm going to contextualize with things like maybe Napoleon and his conquest of much of Europe at the very beginning of the 1800s, and how a balance of power had to be restored at the Congress of Vienna in 1815. Maybe I'll discuss something about that. But the idea is that you want to make something that's going to be relevant to your thesis and is going to set the stage for your whole argument, but that doesn't steal stuff from your actual argument. Okay, so I kind of paused in my thinking there in brainstorming my contextualization just now, because I was going to talk about like the Berlin Conference of 1885, imperialism, maybe German unification, but I think I want to discuss those in my body paragraph, so I don't want to use that stuff. All right, sorry if that's all too deep and confusing, but I'm just kind of making this video off the top of my head. So you want to set the stage, you want to use specifics, okay? I tell my students that in general, 2 to 3 well-explained sentences does it for your contextualization. All right, so we contextualize right out of the gate. To me, it's the most logical place to put your contextualization attempt. There is no rule from College Board that you have to contextualize at the start of the essay. Technically, you can get the point anywhere that it's done well in the essay, but this is the place in my book to try it. Okay, then to make sure that this contextualization doesn't seem super like random and tacked on to College Board, you want to bridge between contextualization to your thesis. And this could be done with like half of a sentence or a sentence. So, for example, I talked about Napoleon and the Congress of Vienna and the balance of power established in 1815. So my bridge might be something like, this balance was maintained for just under 100 years. And finally, because of other causes, erupted into global conflict in 1914. The primary causes of World War I were militarism, alliances, nationalism, and imperialism. All right, I'm just going with like the main acronym because it's super easy to remember. All right, so did you see how I just bridged into my thesis? I had this little line about how this balance of power that I was talking about for my contextualization, it held for a long time, but eventually exploded into World War I. And now I've got my thesis, and my thesis needs to be historically defensible, so I can't earn the point if it's inaccurate. It's got to lay out a line of reasoning. So in other words, it needs to basically forecast what your body paragraphs are going to be about. In my example, militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism, okay? Historically defensible layout, line of reasoning, and of course it has to be on prompt. So if I wrote about in my thesis about the effects of World War I don't care if you write the best essay ever about the effects of World War I. In this hypothetical example, our essay is about the primary causes of World War I, and so you're not going to get the point. All right, thesis goes right here. Okay. Thesis can only be earned in certain places of the essay. According to the College Board, it has to be in the first paragraph or the last paragraph. Now, obviously, if you're not using paragraphs, my goodness, what in the world did I teach you? You have to use paragraphs in all of your writing, always in life, if you want people to understand what you're reading, but definitely in a college level essay. All right, so basically, since this can be earned in both places, we are going to briefly restate our thesis at the very end of our essay, and I'll try to remember to talk about that before I'm done. Okay, then the rest of our stuff is going to happen in our body paragraphs, okay? Now, normally in a typical LEQ, you're going to be writing a 2 to 3 body paragraph essay. In my example LEQ, there is technically 4, but that would be really crazy and intense, so let's just pretend I only went with 1, all right? Each one of the lines of reasoning that I laid out is going to be the topic sentence of my body paragraphs. We're not trying to be cute or fancy in an AP history essay. We're trying to be clear and explanatory in our writing. We want to create an argument for how, in our example essay, these are the primary causes of World War I. So this is going to be my, one of the primary causes of World War I was militarism, okay? And then I said alliances, and then I said imperialism. All right, cool. So inside of my body paragraphs, I need to do a couple of things in order to get these points. First of all, I've got to give specific pieces of evidence to support that these are actually causes of World War I. Remember, specific means proper nouns usually. This is something that's past vagueness. So if you say things like, everybody was competing for resources, that's vague. That's not going to get you credit towards evidence. But if you say, for example, in the scramble for Africa, countries like Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, and Italy were trying to execute the plans that they made at the Berlin Conference. Now, all of a sudden, that's clearly specific evidence, and they're going to give you credit for that, okay? Now, in order to get your use of evidence points, you have to use the number of pieces of evidence that College Board lays out in their scoring guidelines. Scoring guidelines do vary by year and by LEQ questions. So questions typically that are, easier, this would be a super easy question. They're probably going to have a higher number of pieces of specific historical evidence that you have to use in order to get your use of evidence point, okay? And as soon as you reach that threshold, they're going to give you that point for this first one, because this first one is just, are there specific pieces of evidence present that could relate to the prompt? And if you have enough, then you're going to be good. So I typically tell students 4 to preferably 6 pieces of historical evidence, and you're probably going to get this point, okay? But as always, you want to do the more the merrier. So before you ever start writing an LEQ, you should spend 5 minutes just brainstorming specific stuff that you remember that's related to the prompt, okay? So for the prompt here, before I even start my essay, I'm just going to try to do a data dump. And if I can do it in categories, great. That'll make my writing less of a heavy lift when I'm actually doing the essay. But I want to do things like the Berlin Conference of 1885. I want to do things like, you know, the unification of Germany, unification of Italy. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. I want to list as much as I can think of, okay? And then I want to see while I'm writing, where can I bring those in? So if you use them, whatever the number threshold is, probably 6 or more, then you're going to get the 1 point. Then if you use them and really explain how they support your argument, how they demonstrate, in our case, that this is a underlying cause of World War I, then you get the support your argument point. I'm not going to go into greater depth on that though, because there's other videos that do a better job between these 2 points, okay? And then finally, the last point that you really need to care about is historical reasoning. So historical reasoning is just you using the AP history thinking skills where appropriate. So those are super common to use. Similarities and differences. Anytime that you can point out a similarity and difference, do it. Causes and effects. Anytime that you can point out and explain cause and effects, do it. Continuity and change. Anytime you can find those things, do it. Those 3 things are your friends. Do them as much as you can and wherever it makes sense. In general, if you write a good college level essay, this is like the easiest point that you're going to get, because you're naturally going to do that to deal with the history prompt. All right. So the thing is with the LEQ, the points that like you just want to make sure that you get, your bread and butter points, are your thesis, your contextualization, your first evidence point, and your historical reasoning point. And in general, if you get a 4 on the LEQ, you're in great shape to pass your AP exam with 3 or better, okay? So if you want to nerd out a little bit more on the support your argument with evidence point or the complexity point, feel free to do that in someone else's video. But my take on the complexity point is that it's like hitting the lottery. I don't think I maybe, have ever successfully found one in an essay that I graded for College Board. I can't think of one off the top of my head. So like it's just super hard to get. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible. It's just really hard. And what I always tell my students is, don't worry about that one until all the other points are really secondhand nature to you. Okay, next we're going to look at the DBQ. The DBQ, that's the last writing that we need to cover.